And I learned how to edit, so I can edit this part out if need
All
be.
right. Can you see that?
I see Cam's
No.
beautiful little boy. No.
Oh, okay. Shoot. Hold on one. Oops, back.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you guys go ahead and make sure all your mics are to mute.
All right, but you do not see my screen.
I do not.
Okay, give me 1 second. Dang
Okay.
it. All right, Facebook. We're on Zoom. Let's go back here. Share content. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, now.
There we go. It's looking better.
Okay, give me 1 sec here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Here we go. All right. So, ladies, tonight I'm going to do managing maladies, which is disease, parasites. Oh, not pets. That should be pests and their control. Now, there is a whole laundry list of things that can go wrong in your hives, but this is a beginner beekeeping class. And there's just really, as a first year beekeeper, for most of you, there's only a couple that you're really going to see and focus in on. So I'm going to bring the other ones up, but I'm going to blow through them pretty quick. And then we can always, circle back and look. Okay. So, me being the geek that I am, the two books that I took this from tonight are both from Penn State. The one left on is Beekeeping Basics. The book on the right, I think it's like a whopping 10 or 11 or $12. And it is by far just a fantastic investment you can make. It's got wonderful pictures, very succinct descriptions of honeybees and their maladies. Okay. So you're starting to keep bees. You're buying your wood and ware. You're investing your time. You're setting up your hives. You're purchasing bees. As a beginning beekeeper, this is the part I didn't think about. What is my responsibility? My first line of defense of protecting the colonies lies in your ability when you're looking at your hives to be able to detect and recognize early symptoms of diseases and other issues. Why do I care about that? Because if I don't recognize issues going on early, then it's going to lead to decreased productivity. And then my hive becomes weak. And then I end up with a dead colony. And you're going to find out as we go through all these things, the number one recommendation is to keep a strong colony. This is where having a mentor or completing this class and going to Phyllis's and having the ability to spend literally, if you could spend a couple of hours looking into someone else's hive or looking into your hive with someone who knows what they're looking at, it will save you years of mistakes because I was a bee killer for years before I became a beekeeper. All right, so what are we looking at tonight? Brood diseases, diseases in adult bees, parasitic mites, predators, and pests. Brood diseases, we're talking about when your bees are babies and they are in those cells and capped. So major brood diseases, American foul brood, European foul brood, sac brood, chalk brood, stone brood, and parasitic mite syndrome. When I talk about brood, you're going to hear people constantly talk about, oh, is that a good brood pattern? Oh, is that a spotty brood pattern? Oh, is that a bad brood pattern? And you're like, what the heck are they talking about? The picture on the left, that queen has laid almost in every single cell. And you see a couple open spots on there. Even with a really good, healthy queen, worker bees have the ability to smell disease. Some bees can do it better than others. If they know there are mites underneath the cap and they're what you call a hygienic bee, they're like, super cleaners, they'll take that cap off and they'll pull that larva out and they will throw it away. So a good brood pattern on my left there, a couple holes. Spotty brood, well, there's a whole lot more spaces. Whoops, sorry. There's a whole lot more spaces open. And then bad brood, that's just a hot mess all the way on the right side. So when we're talking about brood patterns, you would like to see what is in the very left-hand side of that picture. Okay, there's only a couple of diseases that I really want to focus on tonight. And the number one is American foul brood. If you talk to beekeepers, 99% of them will have never had American foul brood. It's been around since the Egyptians were here. It's an infectious brood disease. It's called by a bacteria. It is the most widespread and the absolutely most destructive of all brood diseases. It is highly contagious, massively devastating. So even though you and your buddies may have never seen it before, as a beekeeper, it is your responsibility to know the symptoms and be able to recognize AFB in its early stages. If you ever suspect you have American foul brood, you immediately contact your state apiarist and say, hey, come out here and help me look. And if you say you think you have AFB, they will be at your house, I guarantee you, within the week. So what is it? Adult bees are not affected by it. It affects larvae that are less than 53 hours old. And these larvae become infected because they're ingesting spores that have been present in their food they're being fed. So that top picture on the right, it shows a nice healthy larva, day like 5 through 8 there on the left side. But if you look at the progression of that larva, it starts getting darker and darker. And by the time you get to the right, it looks like it has just basically sunken into that cap cell. And it's still, that larva is pointing out. When you look at the picture below, that's a really bad case, but those cells are cap cells, but they're sunken. They're like sunken in. And if you notice on the left-hand side, there's a perforation, there's a small hole in there. Worker bees can tell that there's something wrong with that larva, and they will perforate. They'll make a hole in there. Now, they may not remove it for a few days, but my local inspector here, Bonnie, when she pulls out hives and pulls out frames to inspect, she doesn't look at the bees running around on it. The first thing her eyes focus in on is, what does that cap brood look like? Does she see spotty pattern? Does she see small perforated holes? And American foul brood is not the only reason you get those holes, but you get other things. So during the early stages and up to 3 weeks after the death of the larva, that larva turns into this disgusting glue-like consistency funk. And you can literally take a pin and put it in to that cell and dibble it in that funk, that dead rotted larva. And when you pull that pin out, it pulls out, excuse the way to say it, like a big disgusting loogie. It just ropes all the way out. It's disgusting. There's not another disease that does that. That is your first sign that you have AFB. What happens then afterwards is the bad part. Those disgusting ropey larvae, after 3 weeks, they dry out and they become this black scale that's typically on the bottom of that cell. Each of those little itty bitty dried black scales contain 100 million AFB spores, which is enough to infect basically every hive worldwide. Those spores, a minimum suggestion is they're good for 40 years. Typically, they say they're close to good for 80 years. There's nothing you could spray them with. There's nothing you could treat them with. American foul brood has been around forever. This is why when people talk about buying used equipment, have they had their equipment inspected? Do you know where that equipment came from? Because you may find bee equipment that's been stacked in somebody's barn for 40 years and say, hey, there can't be anything wrong with it. Guess what? If those hives died out from American foul brood, it's still able to make other bees sick. So how does AFB get spread? And this is where it's scary. So the nurse bees feed contaminated honey to the larva. They get sick and they die. After the larvae die, the house bees come in to clean out those cells because the bees died. But now when those house bees clean out the cells, they're spreading those spores everywhere they walk. As those bees walk around, now they put those AFB spores, the little dried stuff that lasts for 80 years, it contaminates the honey. This is why, if you are ever feeding frames of honey from one hive to another, you need to make sure the hive you're taking that honey from is a healthy hive and there's no AFB. When you get this infection, it can start small, but it's going to end up weakening the colony. When colonies get weak and they have honey in them, bees come from other hives and they rob them out. So when those robber bees come in and they take that infected honey, they are now taking those AFB spores back to their hives. So this is how we spread it from hive to hive. As a beekeeper, my gloves and tools can pick up those spores and spread them. That's why if somebody's coming to work bees with you, you want to make sure their hive tool is clean and shiny, and you want to make sure that they've got on a clean pair of gloves. What happens if you have AFB? You contact your state inspector. They're going to test your bees. When we had this happen in Pennsylvania the last 2 years, all inspections stop. Once they identify a hive with AFB, they will inspect every registered hive within a 3-mile radius of that hive to make sure everybody else's hives are okay. It used to be they would treat with antibiotics. That is not as common anymore. You could pay to have your hives irradiated. It's very expensive. Typically, what happens, you end up burning your hives. Okay. So that is AFB. That is the evil mother of them all. So now I'm going to fly through these next ones. European foul brood, it's got that same name, but guess what? It's okay. It's a bacterial disease. It's brought on by stress. It usually only happens in the spring and early summer. It enters the larva through contaminated brood food, usually disappears when a nectar flow occurs. All castes of your bees, your workers, your drones, your queens are susceptible, typically will not kill a colony. And if you look at that picture on the upper right side there, you can see those larvae, they get sick, they change colors, but they're not doing like the American foul brood. The American foul brood, they're pointed out. These larvae are all curled up. And yeah, it's not a good thing, but it's not that big of a deal. Chalk brood, that's another crazy one. What color is chalk? Chalk is white. This is a fungal disease. Bees eat the spores of the fungus with the larval food. And then these little larvae, they're all happy to develop in their little cell. And this freaking fungus, like a mushroom, it develops these little strings. And that little larva, it goes through and it mummifies the entire larva and it turns it bright white. They have a cotton-like appearance. They're almost soft. This happens, it's most prevalent in the spring. They suggest improving ventilation and requeening the colony. Again, not a big deal. Sac brood. If you look at the middle picture on the right, you see that larva and it looks like a disgusting sack of something. This is caused by a virus. Does not usually cause severe losses. Most common during the first half of your brood rearing season. Your worker and drone larva can be effective. Usually disappears in the spring when the nectar flow starts. How do I keep it gone? Strong colonies and, that should be requeening or effective for preventing or controlling sac brood. Again, not a big deal. What is the bad boy? American foul brood. Of all the diseases that can affect the brood in your hive, AFB is the bad boy. Rest of these guys are easy to deal with. Stone brood, same things, caused by a fungus. Larva and pupa are both susceptible. Bodies become white and mummified. How it's different from chalk brood. The chalk brood, the little larvae are white, but they're kind of soft like cotton. Stone brood, like it says, they're hard, they're solid, they're not sponge-like. Rarely occurs and no treatment is recommended. All right, parasitic mite syndrome is the last one affecting your brood. And this is kind of a cross between foul brood and sac brood. This is associated with mites. Again, not crazy. So of all the brood diseases, the one I want you to walk away with tonight with is American foul brood. You will probably never see it in your lifetime, but as a beekeeper, it is your responsibility to know what it looks like, what happens, and to be knowledgeable about it. All right. Adult bees, guess what? They get sick too. Nosema, paralysis, both chronic and acute, and dysentery. Nosema is caused by a spore that the adult bees eat when they ingest food and water. These spores get into the lining of their midgut, okay, down in their belly, and then it sheds into their digestive tract, and then it's eliminated in their feces. So what happens with these disease colonies? Dude, they've got bad gut syndrome, and it causes them to have increased winter losses, decreased honey production. Nosema is best diagnosed with dissections of adult bees and examination under the microscope. I learned how to do this, in 4 hours this last January, and I have not done it on my own yet, but that's something I'm hoping to bring to the ladies' retreat this summer. I'm working on it. The picture in the middle there, when you look at the outside of that hive, you're like, oh my goodness, what happened? Well, that's nosema. Those bees came out of there. Bees do not want to poop in their hive. They want to get out of the hive. But when they have that nosema that is messing with their gut, they just come out and it flies. There's brown stuff everywhere. The bottom picture, the upper picture that's glowing white is an unhealthy gut. The bottom picture where it's more amber, this is where they've pulled that midsection where they've dissected a bee out. That is what a healthy gut should look like. So how do I keep nosema at bay? I want strong colonies, and my fall production of brood is very important. So it all goes back to, how do I keep good bees? I want a strong, healthy hive. All right, paralysis and dysentery. I'm going to fly through this. There's two kinds of bee paralysis. Usually it's virus. We're going to talk a little bit more about mites. Mites carry, oh, so many viruses. It's terrible, terrible. Like ticks. Ticks carry multiple different viruses. With bees, it's the daggum mites. And there's multiple different viruses that cause issues. And sometimes bees can get into nectar, fermented pollen, and that could cause them to get paralyzed too. You'll see them crawling around on the ground outside of the hive. Dysentery is not a disease, it's a condition. And dysentery is different than nosema. Bees get dysentery, they basically get the poops because they have way too much water in their body. So, two reasons that cause this is prolonged confinement during the winter and early spring. Like, bees do not want to poop in the hive, they are going to hold it till they can get out. And sometimes it makes them have diarrhea, makes them have dysentery. Also, when you feed your bees in the fall, you'll hear people in the spring will feed them a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar and water, but in the fall, they'll feed them 1 part water to 2 part sugar. They feed them a thicker syrup. The reason is those bees are feeding on that late. The bees have to get rid of a lot of that moisture out of the hive. And if your bees are eating food with too high of a water content going into the fall, you can cause them to have dysentery. So dysentery is a condition, not a disease. Nosema is where they've picked up something that is messing with their gut. Dysentery is just where they've got too much water in their system. All right, parasitic mites, varroa mites, tracheal mites, and tropicolaps. Two things I want you to take away tonight. I want you to take away American foul brood as a beginner beekeeper, which you'll probably never see. But I want you to take away varroa mites, because every single one of you is going to see varroa mites. Varroa mites did not appear in the United States until the 1980s. My dad was a beekeeper in the 70s and early 80s. Beekeeping was super easy back then. You put your bees in a box, you pulled your honey. There were not all these mites. Now you've got to treat for mites. The first 5 years I kept bees, I would get through till February, early March. My bees were making noise, and then all of a sudden they were dead. What happened to my bees? It's because mites infect your bees with multiple viruses. It makes them weak over the winter, and there's just not enough of them to make a strong hive to get through to make new bees to come out in the spring. So the correct name for a varroa mite, which is pictured in that upper right picture, is Varroa destructor. It's considered to be the most serious malady of honeybees. It came, as I said, in the 80s from Asia. It's an external parasite visible to the naked eye, found on the outside of the bee. The female mite is reddish brown, and she's about the size of a pinhead. Males are slightly smaller in tan and color. With your eye, if you go to Phyllis's house one time, or you go to the women's conference down at Jane Lou one time, you will see, you will be shown mites. Once you see mites, you will never unsee them. You will have the ability to look and pick them out. Adult female mites can live outside brood cells, and they're found primarily on adult drone and worker bees. This behavior allows them to be able to get into new colonies and survive the winter. When female mites are ready to lay eggs, they move into brood cells containing young larvae right before those cells are capped. And that female mite, she goes down to the bottom of that cell, underneath that larva, and hides out under there till they cap that cell. Then she lays 4 to 6 eggs. Those eggs, usually they'll make 1.5, 2 mites, and the mother and then her offspring then will feed and develop on that bee as it matures. When that bee then, that cell is uncapped and that bee hatches out come the new varroa mites, and they scatter and they move into new cells. You must understand mites as in varroa destructor. There are other mites, though. There's something called tracheal mites. They were here in 1984. When they first came out, they were a massive problem. They destroyed hundreds of thousands of colonies in the United States, but they've kind of like subsided. They're not a big deal anymore. There's a new mite called Tropolelaps, currently found in Asia, that is moving this way. It has not yet been found in the United States, but the bee biologists that do all their research, their eyes are on these Tropolelaps because that's probably going to be our next problem coming down the road. All right, pests. Wax moths, hive beetles, mice, ants, earwigs, and yellow jackets. The two ones you need to pull away from here, first is wax moths. Wax moths, for the most part, with a healthy hive, are not an issue. You got these cute little moths. That middle picture on the left-hand side is just that cute little moth. But that female there will go and lay eggs in your wax, in your frames. And if you look at that picture on the right, those are top of wooden frames in your beehive. And those larvae, they literally eat your wood, and they pupate, they spin their cocoons, and then they hatch out. And if you look at that bottom left picture, I should have gone up to my barn because I have up there, they spin this web all across your wax. And it's disgusting. It ruins your wax. And it typically, you're going to see that in a very weak hive, or if you have stored your wax frames after you have pulled your honey supers off and you've stuck them in your barn or your basement, and those wax moths find them, they will destroy your wax. It's disgusting. They pose a threat until the temperature drops below 40 degrees. Females fly at night. They deposit their egg masses. Larvae hatch out. They make those nasty webs. Those larvae feed on bee cocoons, old bee skins, and pollen. Cocoons attached to the frames. How do I control this? I need a strong colony. When I'm done with my honey supers for the summer, in a perfect world, I could put them in a freezer and freeze them because that cold will kill anything on there. And then I can put them away for the winter. And as you start beekeeping, how you store your honey supers is not something you're going to worry about till next fall, and we'll address it further then. Hive beetles. That's the other pest I want you to be familiar with. You're going to go out, start working your hives. You're going to pull your lid off. You're going to see these little black beetles running around. Hive beetles first were identified in Florida here in the United States in 1998. They came out of Africa. They're not a big deal. Bees can control them. Phyllis is down in Florida. Here we see some. Down in Florida, they're everywhere in that hive. But bees have a way of taking care of them and corralling them. Where the problem occurs, I pulled honey 2 years ago. I pulled 10 supers of honey, a lot of honey. I had a gallbladder attack the next day. I had emergency surgery. These boxes of honey sat in my garage inside on the floor, covered with a tarp. And I came back 7 days later to spin my honey out. I picked up the first box and there was like honey running out. And I start to see all these little worms. And that's what I saw is that bottom right picture. So what those wax or the hive beetles had done, the hive beetles had laid their eggs and their larvae hatch out. When hive beetles defecate, when they poop in your honey, it causes it to ferment and it turns it into a runny liquid that literally runs out of your wax. That honey is not edible. As I picked box after box up to think, oh, maybe it's okay underneath. By the time I got to my bottom box, there was 3 inches of maggots on my floor with this disgusting fermented honey running everywhere. Oh, sorry. Dadgummit. Sorry. Oh, Phyllis, I lost it. Stop share. I need my camera. Come on. Dadgummit. Shoot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you.
My
Yes.
my aunt, my dad were my mother-in-law is very ill and she just called and it switched my thing off. So anyway, I could finish up looking at it right here. So wax moths or hive beetles, they're disgusting. So the moral of the story is when you pull your honey, you want to extract it within a few days. You do not want to let it sit. Now, the next year, I had boxes of honeys that sat for 4 months, and guess what? They were okay. There's other pests that you're going to see in your hives. You're going to see ants. When you take your upper cover off, sometimes on your top cover, you will see ants all over the place. They don't bother the bees. If I wear a ventilated suit, those things crawl in and bite me through my suit. But if you take some very cheap cinnamon and sprinkle it around your inner cover, guess what it does to the ants? It makes them run away. Sometimes you're going to open your hives and see earwigs. Sometimes you're going to open your hives and you're going to see mice. With the mice, you could put on a hardware cloth across the front of your entrance, but those are particularly a problem during the winter, and you don't want those mice in there. So those are pretty much my pest. The big things that I can't get back to my pictures, we're going to look at are bears. Phyllis will be able to talk on Bee Chat later on about how to prevent bears. Once a bear finds your apiary, it's kind of hard to get rid of them. We will talk later on about how to keep bears out of your apiary. Another thing that could bother your hives are skunks, raccoons, and possums. Skunks are the worst ones. They will come up to your hive. Sometimes you will see scratch marks. You'll see the dirt scratched out underneath their hive, but skunks come during the night and they scratch on the entry board of your hive. And then those guard bees come out like, hey, what's going on? And that skunk sits there and eats bees and will do it night after night. And if you look around the entrance of your hive, the skunks cannot digest the exoskeleton, the outside part of the bee. So they will eat the bees, suck out their insides, and then spit out their exoskeletons. If you see their poop anywhere, they will be full of freaking bee skins because they cannot digest those. So that is basically what I brought to the table tonight. Okay. You want to do a quick quiz? I made a short and easy one. What is the most widespread and destructive of all brood diseases?
Sue, can you stop sharing?
Yes. You are sharing. Okay. There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. What is the most widespread and destructive of all brood diseases? What is the number one horrible?
American foul brood.
AFB. Excellent. Do adult bees die from AFB?
No.
No, they do not. Just the young ones, the larvae. Must you report AFB to your state apiary inspector?
Yes.
Yes. What is the difference in appearance of a larva affected by chalk brood and stone brood. What color are they both?
White.
Which one's soft and which one's hard?
The
Chalk brood
stone
soft.
and the
Chalk
stone.
brood is white, stone brood is hard.
Brown.
What is evidence of nosema outside of your hive?
Yellow poop marks.
Poop. They pooped everywhere.
It's usually darker. It's not usually yellow.
Right. Is dysentery a disease or a condition?
Condition.
It's a condition. Like when you get diarrhea, it's not a disease, you have a condition. Have varroa mites always been in the USA?
Yes.
No.
Those bad boys didn't show up to the 80s and they made beekeeping a much rougher road to hoe. What 3 things can prevent wax moths from ruining your drawn out frames of comb? While there's still bees in there, it's going to be strong colonies.
Freezing temps and light.
Perfect. You're a beast. What damage can a hive beetle do to your honey?
Cause it to
Slime.
ferment.
Yes, it slimes. It's so disgusting. And what can you sprinkle on your inner cover of your hive to deter ants?
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon. All right, ladies, you got any questions for me? Complaints, suggestions?
I do.
Yes.
The for the wax moths, and I'll show you, but if you guys want to jot this down, you can make this into a spray, and a little bit goes a long way. But like if you go to your apiary right now and you find a dead out, you don't have to worry about it because it's cold, but you want to do it when it starts warming up. But you want to make this mixture. I found it last year or a year before, and it has really saved my frames. But it's XENTARI, Zentero is how it's called, or what it's called.
Yes.
And you just put it in a pumper spray and just mix it, and I do a gallon at a time and just spray both sides and put it back in. And you want to, before you put bees in it, but I have put bees in it and it's never hurt them, but you want to give it, at least 4 to 5 days before, you spray it and then you put bees in it.
And it works beautifully. And for those of you that are hesitant on using anything in your hives, I typically look at Europe because their rules are much stricter than ours. And Europe has been using this forever. And the United States just legalized this like 2 years ago. And like, I'm Joe Organic Gardener here. I don't want to put anything, but it is once you have suffered wax moths and ruining 80 frames of drawn wax, what Phyllis just said rocks your boat.
And don't throw them away either. Everybody, I guarantee you, if they've been a beekeeper for 3 to 5 years, more than that, have top marks on their frames and their boxes, because wax moths have gotten into that, and they don't leave any disease back. They're just a nuisance. They ruin everything that's in the hive, and the bees, they leave because they can't handle them. They don't kill the bees. So, when we first started, 16 years ago, we were told, by people in Mason County to burn our equipment for wax moths. And now it's like, oh my gosh, we found out that there's nothing wrong with it. They're just a pain in the butt and they ruin your equipment. So don't burn it, just scrape it off. And that's what another thing I was going to say is the wax that you get off of them. Like I use plastic, so I would scrape all that off and I just throw it in a big old pot with a little bit of water, boil it down and strain it. And I use that wax. I don't use it with cosmetics like, anything for the skin, but I use that to wax my frames back. So, it's not a loss. It's just a lot of work.
It's annoying. All right.
It is.
I am going to dip. I'm going to go call my daddy.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies, very much.
Nicely done.
Oh, thank
Thanks,
you.
Sue.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Can you guys My
I have
my
2 cents.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I've used the Zentari myself, and anybody who is an organic gardener, if you're familiar with the product that is
Yep,
known as BT, it's the same thing.
yep. Good point. Yep. I read that last year. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. And yeah. And also I wanted to touch base. I'm glad you said that, Michelle, is the cinnamon. I don't put any cinnamon on mine. I put organic cinnamon and I keep it, in my arsenal because and when I pop that lid and I have something that the ants can crawl on because I don't usually use inner covers, but it's like a tarp or whatever, and I'll take my hand and kill all the eggs and the ants, and then I put the cinnamon and they don't come back. It really works. So, all right. So can you guys see my presentation or no?
Yes.
Is that the YouTube presentation?
Yeah. Is it, you can see a bee with mites on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to try this, and I can't see you guys at all. Only thing I can see is the YouTube. So let me see if this works. And Michelle, keep your mic open and let me know.
Okay.
Info, and I you can't hear it, can you? Left something out.
No.
So if you find that question in your head that I left something out, just can you turn it up? We'll do a Q&A afterwards. So, but Mite Treatments, and the way that I did this presentation
Oh, I hear it.
is I took.
I
Can you
hear
hear it
your
now?
voice.
Yeah. I've stared at it so long that I can't even
You gotta
remember how
turn
to
it
do it,
up
but
though.
5 treatments. Yeah, turn your. I had to turn mine up too. To my least favorite, and that's what I talked about. Is it worth listening to or not? And yeah, we're going to talk about what the beekeepers
Yeah,
use,
if
and
you
it
could
really
start it
shouldn't be
over so
about
we could hear
well, it
from the
should be
beginning.
me. Well, it wasn't anything. I just said that them. These are the top five that I don't use at all. You didn't miss anything. Yeah, this is the 5 best ones. The first one is oxalic acid, and then the next one is brood break, and they kind of go hand in hand. And then Guard, I started using that last year. I used it many years ago in the little pans, but last year I used the tub. You'll see it on the slide here, and you use a syringe and then put it on a little pad, and then mite away strips. I do not use those any longer, but I'm not against them. But I would definitely, after I use them, I would do a OA treatment one time and do a folder or the to catch the mites to see if it worked, because that's the problem with a lot of mite treatments that people they either are lazy or they get too busy or they count on the mite treatment working. And I'll talk to that about somebody's mic is still open. I can hear you guys. Remember that there's
Sorry,
something
it's probably
that goes
mine.
along with that. And then Formic Pro, which is a mite away strip, is just the new and improved. And then Hop Guard, which I wouldn't give you a penny for Hop Guard. I lost a lot of hives on a job that I did because of Hop Guard. But anyway, this little graph is pretty cool. It tells you it's the toxics and the invention, prevention, and the synthetic compounds, which that's the true chemical, is their Apivar and it's Amitrax. And then the natural compounds is your thymol, which is Apilife, and I've never used that, and I've heard people, but it's really not out there. And then this Apigard, it is thymol, like it said, and I really like it. I think it killed 3 of my queens, so that's always something that you need to be aware with the Apigard. Um, and the Mite Away strips, it does, and the Formic Pro. I don't know too much about that. We used it one time, and it wasn't stinky at all, and I think they sold me a bad bucket of it. So, but the Mite Away, it's very smelly, and you might lose some queens on that. And then the oxalic acid and the hops And so those are all natural. And then kill by means, physical means, and by trapping, screen bottom boards, and powdered sugar. Um, and the mite away or mite trapping doesn't kill your bees. Screen bottom board doesn't kill your bees, but the powdered sugar will kill your bees. So just to let you know, I'm not a fan of that either. And reduce, um, yeah, reproduction, and it's just you can buy a small cell comb foundation, and they say that if they're in there, then the mites won't crawl in there. But that's just something that if you're interested in it, then you need to to look it up and research it a little bit more, and resistant stock, and they call them ankle biters, and if they don't have stuff to chew on, then they will chew your their equipment, their boxes, and their frames. I know a guy down south that has them, and he says he was sitting right there, opened it up, and they were chewing on a frame. So that's kind of scary. So come up at you and get you. But so yeah, here we go from least to favorite. And oxalic acid, and these are just some of the
And that's
ways that
wrong.
you can
It's
do it. This
favorite
is
to
a
least.
vapor gun, and this is a wand, and they both do vapors. And then this is the dribble, which that's really not supposed to be in there, but anyway. But these are the different ways for oxalic acid. You have your vaporizer, you have your oxalic drip, and your fogger, and the sponges. I have them upside down because, like we said Tuesday, they are not legal in the state of West Virginia yet. So Shanda's working on it, but I haven't heard anything, and it's been a while. So you have the oxalic acid vapor, and once you have all this equipment, I mean, it looks like a bunch, and you don't have to buy both of these. It's just that this one you can wear with your glasses, which if I had it to do all over again, I would get this one because the only thing showing are your cheeks, and I wear a hat anyway, a veil, so that's not too bad. But yeah, so but this is the one that I have, and you want to make sure that the filters that you get, and people are kind of led the wrong way, but it says organic matter, and it's not the organic like the healthy food stuff. It just means they're tiny. They filter the tiny like the oxalic vapors. But so you need leather gloves, no matter how whatever way you make it, and then with my gun, I need an extension cord and some type of electrical outlet, whether it be by my house if they were here, or I take a generator with me. I carry it with me. But so oxalic acid is an organic acid found in small amounts in green leafy vegetables, and vaporizing it completely fills the hive and kills for many days after application. So it does not penetrate cell wall, and that's the problem with it. Therefore, does not reach cap brood, and that's where your mites are. So there's a remedy. You have to do a full, if you find that you have a lot of mites, then you have to do a full treatment, which I'll say that later. So yep. And but these are your vaporizers and organic acid respirator. That's what those little pink ones are, and other personal protective equipment, which it is called in short PPE, and power source. So treatment regimen for using the OAV, which is oxalic acid vaporization. And you get fancy and you go, oh yeah, I gave an OAV. And then I always think apple cider vinegar, but it took me a long time to understand what OAV was. But the oxalic has no upper temperature limit, so it doesn't matter how hot it is outside, you can still do it whenever. But on the low temperature side, you want the bees to be flying to break cluster. And I was asked that today, and it was like, when can I do it? I said, as long as they're out flying, then they're broke cluster, flying back and forth, then you can give them, you can zap them. The oxalic acid crystals are heated, turning into a vapor. Actually, it turns into a liquid, and then it turns into a vapor, and then it penetrates the hive and has a very high efficiency against the mites. And they say it's a 99% kill. That's what they used to say. And Cayman Reynolds is saying that probably now it's about an 80%, but that's still pretty good. Because you're going to keep on it. You're going to check them and see what your drops are. And then, don't just zap them one time and think you're done, or two times and think you're done. All right. And you will either need it to treat with the colony, or when the colony is broodless, like I said, or treat repeatedly on a fairly strict schedule, which means treating 4 to 5 times at 5-day intervals. So if you do it on Monday, then you just count 5 days, and that's the next time you're going to do it. And it doesn't matter what time of day, just long as it's given on that day. And you get a little leadway, and I hate to tell people that, because they'll go, oh yeah, I can go to 7, but you need what you're doing, you're working along which I'll say this, well, the next line. General idea is to treat over an entire Varroa life cycle. So when the egg is laid, it's 21 days when it hatches, and then it's longer for the drones. So you want to break all that, and then once they're hatched, then you zap them again, and then they kill those that are hatched on the adult bees. So then that's what you want to try to do. All right, oxalic is applied at a rate of 4 grams per brood box. So if you're running 2 brood boxes, whether it be deep or, well, if it's 4 mediums, then it's going to be 8 grams, and you can administer that in 2 treatments. Like do a treatment of 4 grams, pull your gun out and fill it full again, and do it again, 4 grams. So that the equivalent of that hive is 8 grams. And can be, now this just came to light last year. I don't know if it's 100% true, but you can check that out if you're wondering about it, or if your honey supers are on and you you have mites, you can always use your mite away strips. So because you can use those with supers on, but it says you can use an application with the honey supers in place, and it's highly toxic to humans. And what that is it hurts our respiratory system. And people, they say, well, why is it harmful to us, and you're giving it to your bees? But they have a definitely, or a totally different respiratory system than we do. So that's why it doesn't hurt them. So, but you can't get that through some people's heads. But oxalic is known to be easy on the bees and well tolerated by the hive. And once you have the appropriate equipment, treatments are cost effective. I mean, it's probably about the cheapest mite treatment that you can, once you pay off your gun or whatever, your generator, then, and your mask, because they're not cheap either. Then once you get that paid off, then oxalic acid is not, it has gone up, but like everything else in the world, but it's still the cheapest treatment that's out there. The product is not known to accumulate in wax and coal. So, all right, so here's your oxalic dribble. And I have never done this. I wish Michelle was here, because she does the dribble, but you can only do this when it's broodless. So that means in the fall and during the winter. And I've always been afraid to do it because I don't want to get my bees wet in the winter. So it just doesn't make sense to me. And I've never seen this recipe use water. So if anybody uses dribble, take that, do that note and say, talk about, if you add water in your recipe or if you do not. So, but they changed to glycerin. They started with sugar water, and some bees, a lot of the bees were dying. And they figured out, Randy Oliver figured out that they were, ingesting the oxalic acid. And so now with using the vegetable glycerin, they don't take that in because they don't like to eat that. So it has helped them. And it's also, it stays on their body longer than the sugar water did. So it's, it lasts longer in the hive itself. and you give 50 cc's through the whole hive, and that's how you do it. You just do, you know, a little bit on each side of the between the rows, and you call it good, and you do 50 cc's. And but the one on the right, I just saw this on in sorry, and but you know, the big shots I guess use that, but on the left, the syringe works really well. I think yeah, I think I did all this. Oh, best done in a single treatment, and broodless, and best used on only 2 boxes. So if you have 3 boxes, that just, they're saying that that's just too much. So I would say, and I might be wrong with this, but you know, if you pick this, then you do your own research, and there's plenty of women on the group that, you know, that use this method. But I think you would have to do every box. So I'm not sure on that. Maybe with 2, you only do 1. I don't know. But yeah, out of my comfort zone, but am interested in it. So now the fogger. Now Michelle does this one as well. I tried it, did not like it at all. Wasted my money because I think it's still sitting on top of the freezer out there. But the only reason I didn't like it is because I didn't know how much oxalic acid I was administrating to each hive. And I think you count so many seconds, and but you know, then it's like, well, is it really going in there like it's supposed to, or is it just shooting glycerin? So, you know, I don't know. I didn't like it, but there's 2 types of oxalic foggers based on the state of oxalic acid use. The standard types are those use oxalic acid solution, and usually you take that yellow bowl off of there, and you get a jelly jar, and you fill that with the right mixture until it dissolves the oxalic acid, and that's what you use. Or you can, you know, do a bigger one. But yeah, that's usually don't use it that way. And then some of the homemade ones they've used to found out how to do the crystals from that, and I've never seen one of those. But foggers by reputed companies use solutions of oxalic acid. They build up fewer deposits of the acid in the fogger. These oxalic acid foggers are easy to maintain, and that's what this one is. And then you just run water through it, and you clear out the crystals. They want you to use distilled water to prepare your oxalic acid solution, or you can use the glycerin, either or. And it doesn't really matter with that. It's just whatever your preference is. And this is because you may be in a region with hard water that contains calcium, and the water will react with oxalic acid and weaken the acid. So didn't know that. I learned that from that. So the effectiveness on the fogger, it's 99% as well. And if it's done properly, and repeat treatments would be the same thing as the vapor. Same solution. All right, here's your sponge method. And but I bought these from Amazon, and they're made with plant products, and they're biodegradable. So, you know, they're not going to be, you know, the bees won't get hurt at all by if they ingest it or whatever. But they absorb 15 times its own dry weight. And Kathy and I both use these now, and I opened a pack, and they are my favorite cleaner. I've cleaned my kitchen all over and go over, and it washes right out. So, but here in red, you can only use this method if you get permission from the EPA for approval in West Virginia. So if you want to use this, you have to talk to them, talk to Shanda, and she can lead you in the right direction. But saying this, here's the recipe um, for the usage of, you know, soaking it. And Cayman Reynolds, I have put that on there. I think Kathy has seen it, but you can, you know, get on that, or you can just go to his and type it in, and you know, slow release sponges, and go right to it. So, but brood breaks. So that goes along with the oxalic acid in on my plantation here. You take the box on the right, and usually uh, you would take a split out of that, which that's on the left. Those are nukes, and if I was doing it in my bee yard, to those are the ones that I sell. So I would just put them normally in a either a nuke box, a wooden nuke box, or a deep like this. So, but when you take that out, you can do it two ways. You can take that queen and put her, if you're a seasoned or 1 year beekeeper and you have comb, then you can put that queen and all the bees that you're going to put in that nuke, that split, and put her on drawn comb. And then when you get her settled, where you want her to be, then you would oxalic acid one time. And then if any mites were on her or on them, then they would, so that hive ought to be really like zero mites. And so what you have left in the big hive, the queenless hive now, is all the brood. So in when you get your queen hatched and blah blah blah, and then you can split it more ways or whatever. But anything that comes out of that hive, and whether you make four more nukes out of it, then you mark those four nukes and the mother hive or the queenless hive, and because they'll all have cells in them by then you want to go back to these hives out of this one big hive, if that makes sense to you, in 21 days, and then zap them with oxalic acid, because everything in those hives that you split with should have been, born. So everything should be hatched and all the mites should be on the adult bees, and nothing's in there laying for them to crawl back in. So you zap them, and that would be a really neat thing to do with your folder or your mite count board to see how many mites fall. That would be an amazing experiment. So, but that's how you do a brood break, and it works very, very well. But you have to go in on that 21st day, 22nd day, whatever, and real close to those numbers, and then zap them with oxalic acid. All right. Number three, Apogard. It's a slow release gel that ensures correct dosage of its active ingredient, thymol. Thymol is a natural occurring substance derived from the plant thyme. So over here, you have what you guys would probably use. And but if you, like Paula said, she had 5 hives. Well, you're going to have to buy 10 of these, because, I mean, if they're booming hives, but if not, you can use a half of one twice and be done with that. But so you might look into this, and it does keep, where unlike Apivar and stuff like that, I think Mite Away strips, it keeps for shelf life, and I'll read that later. But you might, if somebody wanted to go in with you, because this you have to do twice. You have to do these twice. So that would be 10 for somebody that has 5. And if somebody has 10, then that would be 20 applications. So you would definitely be better with this tub. And so something to think about. But Apogard, yeah, is designed not only to eliminate varroa mites, but to take care of chalk brood and tracheal mites as well. It contains non-toxic and natural gel with active ingredients. Ooh, I think my battery is dying. Sorry about that. I thought I had it ready. Yeah, but active ingredients of 25% thymol. This product guarantees a kill of a 95%. So that's pretty good. But like I said before, you have to watch, because it will kill some queens out there. So since it is non-toxic, the entire bee colony is guaranteed safe during the whole treatment process, which that's not 100% true. Um, the key is to the key to is efficiency and the ability of Apogard to exploit the hygienic behavior of bees inside the colony. Bees tolerate it very well. Because of this proven method, Apogard is considered as one of the most ideal integrated pest management, which is IPM, programs on the market. Um, for a low, for a very low price, the Apogard provides a great value for your money. The best to get the best outcome, do the treatment when the bees are active and during the highest daily temperatures. It is not advised to use this product during spring flow. Effective varroa mite treatment requires back-to-back treatments. That's where I was saying if you had 5, you would have to have 10 treatments. This means that you have to order multiple packs. That's the only negative thing that you'll notice the product in comparison to others. And you need to wear gloves. And if you don't, it just tingles your skin a little bit. Why do I know that? Yeah, I forgot my gloves. And yeah, I know, Kathy. Thank you very much. And I didn't know this. Avoid contact with the skin. I did know that. And with the eyes, I knew that. But do not smoke, drink, or eat during application for use in beehives only. I did know that. So an overdose, the use of a dose higher than the recommended 1 tray of 50 grams gel per application. And that's just, you pull it apart and that's 50 grams right there. And when I do my syringe, I do a 30 or a 50. If the hive is humongous, I'll do a 50. If it's medium, I'll do 2 things of 30. So I know that's a 60, but when you hit it in 30, then you're fine. If symptoms persist, remove the excess product from the colony. And let's see, special precautions. Preferably, do not treat during honey harvest. Do not feed colonies before using Apogard, and you can do that. The reason they don't want you to do that is because a lot of times they'll think about the food and not take care of the gel, and walk through it and move it throughout the home or throughout their hive. But when the maximum daily temperature is lower than 59 Fahrenheit, they ask you not to use it, and the activity is low. So they want you to be above 59. And they said to combine weak colonies before treatment. So this is what it looks like and you put it exactly where it is, right in the middle of it. 2 applications of 1 tray of 50 grams Apogard gel per colony. So, and that's if it's big. If it's not, you could probably get by with just 1. Let's see. Open the hive, peel back the foil lid of the Apogard tray, leaving 1 corner of the lid attached to the tray. Place the open tray centrally on top of the brood frames, gel side up. So, yeah, I guess they got to say that. Ensure that there is a free space of at least 0.5 centimeters between the top lid. And so if you use an inner cover, just turn it over to where some of them are flat on one side and others have a little space, and that's all you need. So just flip it over. And if you don't, then you can always put a little matchstick on there or whatever. Let's see, top of the tray and the hive cover board, for example, by placing and I don't know what these boards are, but that's what it is. I was going to take that out and then I forgot, but you can look that up. It is all it board, is just a space
I don't know
board, like a
what
shim.
type it is. Yeah. Anyway, but or an empty super on the top of the brood box and then close the hive. So you can, if that made any sense to you, if you didn't have like a shim or the inner cover that you could flip over, then you could put an empty super, take the frames out, and then put the lid on there. But you don't want to keep them on there too long because they will they will build funky comb in there. So after 2 weeks, come on. There we go. After 2 weeks, place the tray beside the old one, which I didn't know that. I always thought you took it out. Following the same procedure, leave the product in the colony for a further 4 weeks or until the supers are installed, whichever is the sooner. The product should not be left in the hive no more than 6 weeks.
So here's some questions, and they're pretty good, but pretty common questions. Can I feed my colonies while using ApiGuard? And we kind of went over that. It's not, this is not a high risk and will vary between different colonies. So some will go to both of them, and some will only go to the feed. The first dose is supposed to be left on for 2 weeks, but I've noticed that the gel disappears after only a few days. Do I need to put it on another dose right away? And they say no. The speed of which the gel disappears depends on the temperature of the bee and on the behavior of the individual colony. It can take from 2 to 10 days to be removed from the tray, the dosing tray, and the gel will reduce a vapor or reduce as vapor is given off, and as the bees detect the foreign material, they will try to remove it. At high temperatures, the vapors are stronger. The bees will find the gel and tray will clean it up quickly. Strong colonies generally work faster than the smaller ones. At low temperatures, the gel sublides more slowly. So, and I don't know why this is on there. Even if the gel seems to have disappeared after only a few days, there is no need to apply a second treatment until 2 weeks have passed. The thymol, although not in the tray, is active throughout the colony during this time, having been carried around by the house cleaning bees. So that's that ApiGuard, and this is Mite strips. And this is how you apply it, but this is a full treatment right here. And so I would take, this is in one packet, and leave this one in the packet, cut this one in half and put it here and here. And then wait your 14 days. And then I take those off, and then the pad that was left in the packet, you cut it in half and put it here and here. So then wait 14 days and then you take that off. So try not to leave it on. But they are made from natural biodegradable materials and are formic acid, gel strips, polysaccharide gel strips. Efficiency rate is over 90%. But always test after you're done, whether you do a mite wash or an oxalic acid zap on your folder or board, then you need to know if it worked or not. It will not leave any residue in the honey or wax. That's why you can use them with your supers on. And you don't need a spacer rim for those, because you usually put it, if you have 2 boxes, you put it between the brood boxes. Important to wear the recommended safety equipment, which is gloves. You don't need goggles or anything. It's not, liquefied, but it may be a clothespin for your nose, because they are pretty smelly. And make sure to store them in 77 degrees Fahrenheit and away from the direct sun. Treat hives twice with each packet. So, yeah, I guess that's true. So, like I said, you do the first one, and then 14 days you do the second pad. One strip in the brood box for 10 days, but yeah, 10 to 14 days, I guess. Now this is what it looks like. But again, you only do one, and I couldn't find that. So, but you can, this one has, this is a single brood box with a queen excluder and a super. So you can do that. Or this is two brood boxes. And then here we go, 2 brood boxes, a queen excluder and a super, or just one. So, but I would cut that in half and put it right there, and then do the other one. You know what I mean. All right. Let's see. The difference between the Formic Pro and the Mite strips. And it's Formic Pro is the next generation product to the Mite strips formulation. The major differences include the shelf life. They are now 24 months versus 12 months. And the treatment period is 14 days instead of 20 days. So if you do 2 treatments, then you do, I would say it'd be 28 days and 7 days, for the Pro, and then 10 days for the Mite strips. Remove entrance reducers or set back colony 4 centimeters. So if your introducers are on, then they said to set it back. Didn't make any sense to me. The first time I've ever heard that, but they want you to keep an airflow. Entrance must be full width of the hive, so don't close off half and leave the other open. Fully open the entire or for the whole treatment. Screen bottom boards left open do not aid in bees movements of fresh air in brood chambers. So don't count your screen bottom boards as giving them air. And then use your protective gear. And the temperature is outside time, daytime temperature high should be between 50 to 82. And when you're in the 80s, that's kind of iffy. So if you can do 70s, and it says for the first 3 days of that treatment are your crucial days. So look at your weather map and plan for 3 days. And if it stays under 80, then you're good. All right. I know a lot of people use this. Last year was my, 2 years ago was my reckoning year, and lost a lot of hives to Apivar. And a lot of people in Morgantown, Fairmont lost a lot of hives in their backyards to Apivar. So I started, the only way that I saved any of mine, I think, is because I used oxalic acid with my Apivar strips in. So, and it is a harsh chemical. And they said that it doesn't get into the wax, but they're saying that well, I'll read that to you, but yeah, it's amatraz and it is very harmful. And you put strips in the brood area, capable of killing in 99%, and that's the way it used to be, and not in the last 2 years. And how it works. Once placed in the hive, the active ingredient is released over a minimum of 6 weeks period. Bees that can contact the active ingredient on the strip spread it throughout the hive. Mites exposed to the amatraz are paralyzed, and the process kills the mites throughout the treatment period. And the product is utilized in 2 strips per brood box format. So 1 strip per 5 frame. And when we did it, we did 1 per 4. So if we moved the brood down in the bottom and it had anything more than 4 frames of brood, then we added another one down there. And a lot of times there was 2 strips in the bottom and then 1 on top. But it has to stay in for 42 days. So that's a lot of the problem. Like if you use it in the spring, then you have to be able to know when your flow is going, because it needs some I think a week maybe, or 2 weeks. I'll read that here. But yeah, it cannot be used more than twice a year. Honey supers must be removed prior and during treatment. Treatment can take place in the spring and fall, but must be removed 2 weeks prior to the state of the honey flow, or to the start of the honey flow. So that, makes you think a little bit. And the EPA has classified amatraz as a possible human carcinogen. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a cancer-causing chemical. And as with apistan, it is toxic to aquatic life, so don't put your strips where water can run into the creek. Recently, Varroa has also started to demonstrate resistance to the Apivar and the amatraz. And if you choose to utilize Apivar in your mite treatment plan, the manufacturer suggests utilizing the product in a rotation with other mite treatment products and to follow the directions exactly. Amatraz is an unstable chemical in the hive, and it is not known to directly accumulate in beeswax in significant amounts. Rather, it quickly breaks down into other degenerative, yeah, you know that word, read it, chemicals that have been shown to acclimate in the wax in measurable amounts. So it doesn't go in by itself, it breaks down and then it goes into the wax. So last one, hop guard. It's natural. It's made with hops, and it's no chemical residue. Safe during honey flow, easy and effective, and safe on bees, but deadly on Varroa mites. Perfect for mite control, easy and safe to use. Each hop guard 3, this is the new one, Now, when I used it, I do have to say I didn't use the 3 because they were sold out. It was COVID and blah blah blah, and I did the old or the Pop Guard, which it was only old because they came out that year with 3, so it should have worked. But they are very nasty and sticky, and you definitely have to wear gloves just because you don't want it all on your fingers. The daytime temperature should be above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Use 2 strips per brood chamber. That is 1 strip per 5 frames of bees, 2 strips per 10 frames of bees. Strips should be hung between the frames. I think that's what that says. So, but this is a really neat chart, and if you want, I can put it on our page later. But I really like this because it breaks it down. When your hive's broodless, you want to use oxalic dribble or the vapor, which you can use the vapor. You know that even when you have brood in there, you just have to do it different. And so in March and April, which is now, the Formic Hop Guard or Formic Mite Away strips, Hop Guard, and Amitraz, which is the Apivar, or you can do oxalic acid. And then in May, the Formic Mite Away strips or the Apiguard, and then oxalic acid, and honey production, the Formic Mite Away strips, the Hop Guard, or the oxalic acid. And August and September, that's Apiguard and formic acid, or Mite Away strips. And then October, no treatment because they should be pretty decent. And then again, back to January and February, no brood, and you can do the oxalic dribble or the vapor. So, but that's a pretty good one. And say no, kill them suckers. All right. That was tough. That was all right. I say that a lot, don't I? Sorry. I hope you guys got something out of that. I've watched it 4 times today, and and then I couldn't hardly hear it. So if you couldn't hear it, then it is on our channel. Just look for the Big Mite, and you might want to listen to it later. And yes, I am unmuted. Because are some really good questions afterwards with the Q&A, and you might pick up some helpful hints there too. I didn't show all that, but a couple things that I wanted to say is it doesn't matter what you guys use to kill your mites, as long, I mean, like, if you don't take care of them, as soon as you get them and get them settled, you should be doing a mite treatment. And if you can do your oxalic acid, then that way you can do a mite count and a drop, and then you'll know what your bees are like, whether you get them from me or Joe guy down the road, whatever. I always tell you, if you get it from me, when I last mite treated, but I put them in the nuke, and everybody does this. So when you buy a nuke, they're going to be in there for a week or two. So they're going to have babies hatching, and those babies are going to come out with mites on them. So, you know, when you get them home, hey Sue, when you get them home, then you might, let them get settled into your hive and everything, and then you want to do an oxalic acid treatment and count the mites that drop. And just remember, if there's 50 or 60, that's okay, because those were on the adult bees. And with all those little bees, and just consider yourself, pat yourself on the back, because you killed that many in your hive right then and there. So just, that's why I love oxalic acid. I don't do Apivar anymore. I don't do anything but the brood break and oxalic acid. And what I was trying to say a while ago that I started and didn't say it is that it doesn't matter what treatment you guys choose to use, that if you don't keep the mites down, then they will not work well. Like Kathy did, she's another oxalic acid person, but she did 2 years ago. I think both of us did Apogard. You guys can unmute yourself. We're good now. But we did Apogard together, and I lost 3 to 4 queens, but then my numbers were okay, and they didn't hatch, but Kathy had one that was just exploding after her Apogard. But what we think happened is while the Apogard was in there working and it ended on a given day, then the next day she had this big hatch. And then all these mites came out on that hatch and then exploded. So she did a mite treatment. She can talk about this, but a few days after it, because we don't do mite washes now, and we're probably the only people that don't, but because we do, mainly oxalic acid, but it was unbelievable. But I told her, it was like, just think if you would not have done the oxalic acid, mite drop, then they would have just continued to
Right.
get bigger and big. Yeah, exactly. So you have to know your mite count before you go into it, and you have to know when you're done. So you put your mite strips in and you don't know your mite count, then you're just okay. Well, but if it's like imploded, then it's only going to do a portion of that to knock them down. Does that make sense to you guys? You can't put it in a great big hive and expect it to work because they only can kill so much. Go ahead, Kathy.
A lot of people recommend that you do a mite wash before and after a treatment, so you know what you're going into working with, and you know
Right.
if it works or not. Since I don't do mite washes, I do a drop. Always do an oxalic acid treatment and wait 3 days and see what my drop is. So I do
Exactly.
it one way, but either way, you should know what you're going into and what happens after you're done.
Yeah. And if you're looking at your bees and you see you see a mite on their back like that first picture, then they're imploded in there because they get on the bees' bellies. And when they work themselves in the back, then, they're just attached to them. Just so don't go, well, I didn't see any on my bees. I have heard that so many times. And it was like 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see them. So don't count that. Don't be looking at your bees and thinking, well, I don't see any on there. They're okay. So you need to, and if you don't have the means to get your oxalic acid gun, then I guarantee you that a beekeeper, unless you live out like I do, that has a gun that might, at least come and do that one to see where you're at. Do that one treatment, and in 3 days, pull your boards and like. I can't do that. I don't have screen bottom boards, so I get the for sale signs and I put in the front, and then I wait for 3 days and I pull those out. And I don't really count 1, 2, 3. I mean, I do, but I don't. When I'm doing that, I just look and see if there's more than 10, then I'm gonna do another treatment. So, but if
And for
there's
you
five,
new beekeepers, when you start, so you'll get your packages or your nukes this spring, you'll start them in your bottom box.
please don't get packages.
I know I'm trying to be
Please don't.
polite, but
No, like,
the nukes do much better. But you're gonna install a 5 frame nuke into either 8 or 10 frame box, and then once that gets pulled out to 6 of the 8 or 8 of the 10 frames, then you're gonna put a second double deep on, and then they'll start building that out. So once they start building that out, and then you go out when they'll start laying drones, and you crack your boxes, and you'll take your top box, and we call it car hooding. You lift it from the back. You don't lift it off, but you kind of lift it forward. And lots of times they build that brood, the drone comb between the boxes, and you'll split it. And when those split open, you see those big fat drone larvae. You could take your hive tool and pull those off. And that's the best way to look. Are there any drones? Are there any mites on those drones? Because those mites really like to lay on the drones. because they are in that cap cell for a couple more days. So it allows that mite female to lay, more offspring to come out.
And
I
they're not
garbled that.
all red. They will be
No.
white. And so the only way that you can see the wee tiny, tiny babies is watch for movement. So if you crack that open or you move that box off of there, then go to that pupa and watch it. And if you see movement, then that's the white mite. And then you'll see the red dots very easy. They shine like beacons.
And
But
this is why I say I did not work bees with another human being for the first 5 years I did it. And if you could take one day and get to Jane Lou, where we do that retreat, or have a chance to go to Phyllis's, or have a mentor, having somebody that just could pick a frame up and say, this is what you're supposed to be looking at. I'm such a
right.
dummy. I didn't realize that drones couldn't sting till I'd been keeping bees 5 years. Like, I'm like the biggest one to admit I'm the biggest loser of
And that's
beekeeping.
what
It
we're
took me a
here
long
for.
time.
That is exactly what we're here for. So just to show you how to go into a hive correctly and then what you're looking for inspection. Um, but for the dribble, you would do, if you had two brood boxes, then you would do both of those, 50 and 50, because I looked that up to make sure. And Michelle, she's here today. If you heard in the video that, well, I wish Michelle was here. Well, she's here today. And you don't, you're unmuted, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't fog anymore.
I never did the dribble and I don't use the fogger anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't like the fogger at all. But Sue might try the dribble this fall, right? Yes, because it's supposed to be broodless for sure.
I want to try the dribble, but another thing I'm going to do, and I'm ordering them tomorrow. I listened to Richard Noel, and he uses those. It's out of Italy, Api Broma. They're the they're those like you do the cages with the hardware cloth.
Okay.
But these ones you have to. I was laughing because I was at the conference last weekend, and they can access this queen cage from two sides. So you put the queen in there for 24 days and give her a brood break when the dearth starts in like end of June, beginning of July. And I was saying, well, I have plastic foundation. And the guy from Midnight Bee was like, Sue, use your brain. Take a saw and cut a hole out of your plastic foundation and then hang that cage there. You don't need to put in, because I don't have crimped wax foundation. So
Right.
I'm ordering those because they're not much. The shipping is as much as the things are because they're coming from Italy. So I'm
Yeah.
going to try that brood break, which will get me off of, as many chemicals as I can.
Right. The beekeepers in Alaska do that.
Yeah.
That's
A
interesting.
long time ago, and that's how they did their mite treatments. Yep. Good job. Good job.
You
But
could also use drone frames.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yep. Go ahead.
And the drone frames, they're green plastic. The cells are bigger than on regular foundation because the queen will lay drone eggs in a bigger cell. So they'll all congregate there. And then when that gets filled, you can just take it out and either freeze it, scrape it off, or give it to your chickens.
Now,
Yeah.
let me throw in something that Richard Noel threw out this week that I thought was very interesting. They were talking about genetics and bees and your best drones going out to carry best genes out. And he was saying he used to use the green drone frames and he quit using them because the best drones are built in those larger cells, where they have the room to do it. And he said, he thought, again, whoever the hell Richard Noel is, and if you believe what he says, but he's thinking like if you take the green drone frames and that queen is laying the biggest, bestest drone cells, and then you're feeding them to the chickens. And then you're allowing the drones that hatch out of those smaller, where they pull them along the bottom,
Okay, but yeah,
which
well,
was an interesting thought.
that's a
Mhm.
very good thought, and I'm glad you said it because of my breeding process. But what Michelle's talking about, she's using that as a mite treatment.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I have those, and they it was in that picture in one of the, I think the mite
I can
treatment.
get you one
There
right
was a
now.
green one in there. Now, if you do that also, then they will not lay between the the two boxes. So, and that's what I try to do now. Kathy and I use for our honey purposes, which I also use them for my drone breeding purposes. And it's a frame, and it only has foundation in the center, and then it's natural wax here. So they are nicer drones than the green board gives you, but those green boards are wonderful if you don't need a bunch of drones to breed, because
That's
she will lay both sides of those, and you can pick them up, put another frame in, because if you don't, they will build their own comb for you, and then go freeze them, or just sit there. If you scrape them off, they pop and go all over. So I would suggest that you go freeze them and then scrape them off, or take
Mhm.
your honey pick and pick them out for your chickens or whatever. Go ahead,
He
Kathy.
also suggested if you didn't want to pay for the green frames, to take one of your medium frames and put it in your deep
Yes,
box, and then they'll pull out that drone comb on the
yes,
bottom of that, and then you could pull that and just lop
yes.
it off.
I have probably one of, if I don't have one of those ones that I made for my honey producers, that they make drones with, then I do have a medium frame in my hive. And actually, and that is so much easier because you just take it out and take your hive tool and skim the bottom, and then go put that in the freezer, because that's just the way I am. I'm not going to put those babies in boiling water. That's why I can't do frog legs. So I I would freeze them at a slow death, and then put them in water and strain them. And then I have wax. So, and then you can throw those out to your chickens as well. So a little boiled. So, but those are great points. Great points. Um, yeah. I hope nobody is using Apivar anymore. I know I have one friend on, luckily she's not here, but if she watches this, she'll go, yeah, it's me. But her mentor uses Apivar, and so she still does. But it is very highly chemically, and it's just not good. So
Plus, it lost its efficacy really hardcore starting about 3 years ago. It
yes,
just didn't work,
yeah.
which happens.
And the only reason I saved my bees, the ones that I did save, is because in the wintertime, fall, whatever, um, I am 2 weeks. Yeah, there's a drone, but I am 2 weeks below, or behind Morgantown. So when they were starting to lose theirs, and I knew I had Apivar in mine, then I went back to oxalic acid, and I killed one hive, gave me 60 mites, and I saved it. And another one gave me 75, and then the rest of them were pretty good. But I would have lost both of those if I wouldn't have thought of. That's why I just, and the money, because I have ran, 250 hives, and 150 for probably 6 years, and now I'm down to 96, 100 to 130, and all that goes, it's crazy. He doesn't need to cover his head. And but but anyway,
Great.
and it was like he had flowing hair like a girl, right? But anyway, all that, I would have saved thousands of dollars if I would have known more about oxalic acid, because I probably spend $80, maybe a little bit more, because now it's up to $40 a bag for me. And I buy two of them, and sometimes I need to buy that third, but then it takes me into spring. But with Apivar, with my hives and putting, the two in there and one up top, because, my hives were big, um, my bill, and that's before COVID, was $1,300 just for that treatment alone. And my Apigard, it wasn't as expensive, but it was a lot more than, my oxalic acid. And like I said before, once you get your mask, your generator, and you can do it with a battery, whatever, but mine was a plug-in, it's what is it, 110 or 210, whatever. So I carry around my little generator, and I think it's almost weighs as much as I do. So I'm getting old, so I can barely do it. So I try to leave it in my truck, and then I have two 50-foot cords that I do now. But we're women. We find out what works and how to make it work. But yeah, so if you can get you a gun and get your protection, your bees will be happier for it. And I guarantee you, once you get all that paid off, and you can sell it. I guarantee you that if you get out of bees, I'm done. I guarantee you can sell it for almost as much as you put in it. Right, girl?
Yep.
I just
Yep.
got another one. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that might help you, spend a little money. But if you can't get your mite treatments stuff, and I'm going to be mean, but if you can't afford that, then you shouldn't get into bees yet. You should have all that in a row. And, we were lucky because we started with the wand. That was what, $75 or something like that. Now you can get them for 25 and 30, but that's what they're worth. They're awful.
Phyllis, I sat with a guy this weekend that's a commercial keeper. He runs 150 hives. He does
Mhm.
not vape. All he does is dribble.
Yeah. Wow.
But I wish I'd written his name down. He was
Jay
cute.
Cox dribbles all the time.
Yeah, he does. So I want to look at that more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But he
I,
dribbles all summer long, so I'm a little confused. Could you say,
yeah, that doesn't make sense because it says it only works when there's no brood in there.
yeah, and
So
he
With
dribbles
the dribble?
I know he dribbles all summer long because I follow
Well,
him.
the dribble and the vaping are supposed to produce the same results. If you are dribble or vaping when there's brood, you've got to be doing it every 5 or 6 days.
right.
So you're catching each of those series of mites that are hatching out. That's where you want that. What is, Robin Underwood out of Penn State does her
Or not.
organic approach, but it's using organic acids. So, the oxalic,
Well, I think using the glycerin would be better than the sugar. I know the sugar water is not good because they ingest it, right? So,
right.
but the glycerin would lay on the bee and it wouldn't saturate them, because I poured syrup on bees and killed them right now. So, I think the glycerin would do better for the bee and maybe not die as many. But I took it to the commercial bee, Facebook page, and it was like, don't give me any lip, just tell me your true, thoughts of dribble and your pros and cons. And I had more that said never use it again. They killed, so many of my bees. And then I had very few that said we use it all the time. So that was enough for me to not have to go down that road and do something, because what I'm doing for me on my plantation is working.
Right.
And that's what you need to find out. What is easy, and if you only have a few hives, and if you have to do, 4 treatments at 5 days apart, it's going to take you longer to set up than it is to
Yep.
administer. Yeah. And so, don't shy away from that. And because it's easy peasy, you put your clothes on and do not let anybody hug you or whatever, because it is all on your jacket. I have, well, I only have one out yard now, but I had 5 out yards when I was doing this big time. And I would I would have to take, I wore my tank top and shorts underneath because that's how I would drive to the next out yard and then get out and put my oxalic clothes on. Now I just have, and Kathy does it too now. We have overalls
Oh,
and I keep that all in the back of my truck. So,
oh,
what before I administer, I put all that on. And then, because you're going to have to, well, I have to be on the ground a lot because mine are low on the ground. And, I put my boards in, or my for sale sign boards in, and then I, cover it up with a Kroger bag or a Walmart bag. And then, when I'm done, then I just go along and pull all that out. Now, there was something that I was going to say, and I don't remember. Um, but you
Well,
don't, I mean, I talk a lot about oxalic acid because that works for me. But if you don't like it, then don't do it. Don't spend the money. And you can do the mite away strips, but you're gonna have to do a mite wash and not kill your queen and find out what your mite count is, period.
and
Ox-
Man Lake has that new product with oxalic acid
yeah,
in the strips that's long acting.
it's
It's
very
new.
expensive though.
Yeah,
It's
it's new this year.
yeah,
And I
for
think
what it is. Yeah.
one treatment is for 90 days?
Well, that's what those sponges are too. They're
yeah, but you
70 to
have to
90
have
days.
so many strips in your hive.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
for 2 deeps, I need 4 strips.
Okay. And then, I mean, they're pretty expensive because I, we,
Well, that's what I did. I did the math on it, and they last for 90 days. That's the plus, but you do need, I think it's 4 strips for 2 boxes.
yeah, yeah. Just make a sponge. And or you can make a strip. You can take, I saw somewhere on YouTube that they took this real thick paper like stock, and but it was long, and they, cut it in strips and soaked it in there and put it in their hive. But yeah, they still have to walk across it. It's just like Apivar. They have to touch it, where if you would do the vapor, then it goes everywhere. That's just my
Sure
thought.
does.
You were talking about the Swedish towels too. That's
Yeah,
what we use. This is a Swedish towel. When it gets wet, it's just like a cloth and then it dries right up. I actually put them under my water bottles to protect my hardwood floors.
yeah. Oh yeah, they're spot on. I have and I am doing the, don't tell anybody this is being recorded, but I am doing the sponges this year. I'm gonna, I'll go home and oxalic acid, and if it's a nice day, then I'll put my boards in. If not, then I'll just wait and do it again in 2 weeks. But and then I will start doing the after they eat their pollen patty and all that. Now that's another thing. I'll tell you this, and I know it's getting late, but me and bees, I can talk all day. But when you guys get your bees and you feed them so they can, you want to feed them so they can, hoard it up and they can grow. And if you don't want them to grow really fast, like that, you have people think they have to split them because they can't control them or whatever, then don't feed them pollen patties and all that. They shouldn't really need it. You can put out fake pollen and let them, and they'll stop taking that um, when the true pollen comes out. And in the southern part, that is like February, that the willows and the maple comes first, because we used to move ours down to Putnam County or to Mason County, and in February we would do it the very end of February, and we sat there. We left with snow on the ground and went there and was in a long sleeve shirt, and the bees were out and they were bringing back pollen. So if you live in that area, then you probably don't need to have the pollen sub. But in our area, it takes, mine's probably not coming until probably the latter part of March. So I'll go home and I'll make pollen patties because I want them to grow huge. So, because if you don't have huge hives, you don't get honey. They will not make it. They will not bring it in. So, and then when you guys get to that point, and that's what bee chat's for, I will do a demonstration like this, but on a video on how to do a single brood chamber and a Damari method, and and go from there once we get going in that time zone. But does anybody have? Oh, I have the question. You guys answer them on your own time, and then see if you get stumped or whatever, and then I will look for chat. I missed it for how many days? I don't know, but it doesn't tell me that people write on that stupid chat. So you can put it in the on the Facebook page of our women's if you have a question, and I'd be glad. That tells me that somebody posted something. But does anybody have questions about
Bring on
the team?
spring. When's it coming?
Do what?
Spring. I want spring.
I don't know. You posted that picture and it wasn't a few hours, and I looked on our ring camera and we had snow. So
About 12 inches.
really, wow.
You want spring. I want a freaking house.
I know, but it looks like you're in one right now, though. Nice back.
Listen, this garage is 1,200 square feet. The architect has drawn us a house. It's 1,300 on the first floor and then like 800 on the bottom floor. I went and got my permit at the Washington County sewage thing because the only thing that comes here is a phone line and electric line. We're getting there. So
good.
who has skunk cabbage where they live?
Have what? I don't.
Skunk cabbage. So skunk cabbage is one of the very first pollens that get brought in where I live. I have a huge patch about a quarter mile from my house. And skunk cabbage, when it starts to bloom and come up, it actually produces like an antifreeze that allows it literally to come through the snow for that first funky purple looking thing before it makes the big skunky cabbage leaves.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
My first thing is crocus.
Yeah.
Mine is maple.
Nice.
And it comes in white. So when your bees are bringing in white pollen, that's your maple. So,
Crocus
well,
comes from maple.
if you guys don't have anything else, then we'll end this and I'll go watch the WVU girls play.
Woo! Ladies, beekeepers, I'm so excited for you guys all to get bees. It's going to be fun. Hopefully you do much better than I did the first 5 years because I'm the queen.
They will because they have us. They have us. They will. They will.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
thank you guys so much. It was wonderful.
Night.
Thank you.